If you ask an American car enthusiast to name Ford's most iconic models, they'll say Mustang, Galaxy, Thunderbird, or Torino. Few ever mention the Fairlane, a name that seems ordinary, modest, and sometimes even dismissed as a family car. But that's exactly where the interesting part lies. Because it was created to serve the middle class, the Fairlane became the perfect foundation for Ford to test its strongest, boldest, and most daring engines throughout Detroit's golden 3 decades. And today, we will open the door of time to explore the 10 rarest Ford Fairlanes ever built. Machines that are not only scarce in number, but also carry the stories of an era that will never return. 1966 Fairlane GTA 390 F-Code. What makes this car a transition milestone for the Fairlane is the 390 CID F-Code engine, producing 335 horsepower. It was a bold upgrade compared to the earlier 289, and it directly laid the foundation for the 1967 to 1968 era, when Ford unleashed the 427 and 428 Cobra Jet that shook all of Detroit. The Cruise-O-Matic automatic transmission was mandatory because the A in GTA literally means GT automatic. This created an interesting personality, a muscle car that operated smoothly and gracefully, like a gentleman stepping out of Wall Street but carrying the heart of a weekend racer. What makes this version truly rare is not the design, but the extremely short production window. In just the first 6 weeks of 1966, Ford used a unique batch of components for the early S-Code release. As a result, the number of surviving cars today is estimated to be under 200, with many configurations reduced to only a few examples worldwide. For collectors, and the GTA 390 S-Code is like a missing puzzle piece, a Fairlane standing exactly at the crossroads between the finesse of the 289 Hypo and the fury of the 427 FE that followed. 1957 Fairlane 500 E-Code 312 Dual Quad. This was not a model advertised widely or showcased in glossy brochures. Instead, it was more like a rolling laboratory, where Ford engineers tested the limits of the Y-block before moving on to the Paxton VR57 supercharged technology. The car carried the 312 cubic inch Y-block E-Code, equipped with 2 Holley 4-barrel carburetors, a big cam, and a tuned intake system to reach 270 horsepower, an impressive figure at a time when most regular cars barely made a little over 150 horsepower. But what makes the E-Code truly special is its mystery. Production numbers were extremely low, with most records indicating only 35 to 40 Fairlanes built with this configuration. Because most E-Code engines were prioritized for the Thunderbird, a Fairlane equipped with the same setup became ultra-rare. Today, most of them have vanished, turning the E-Code into a ghost in Fairlane history. A single surviving example, regardless of its condition, is enough to make any auction pause for a few seconds. 1956 Crown Victoria Skyliner, glass top. If the 1950s were the era of optimism, of gleaming chrome, and of limitless bold ideas, then the 1956 Crown Victoria Skyliner glass top was the perfect symbol of that spirit. Ford did not just want a beautiful car, they wanted to create a new kind of experience, one where passengers could look up and see the sky itself. And so the front section of the roof was replaced with a transparent, green-tinted acrylic panel, an idea that brochures of the time described as light pouring into the cabin like soda through a straw. But that romance quickly met reality under the summer sun. The cabin turned into a literal greenhouse. Many owners had to use snap-in sunshades, wear wide-brimmed hats, or simply accept sunbathing at all times. Yet those inconveniences are exactly what make the glass top so charming to modern collectors. A living proof of an era when creativity sometimes outran practicality. Under the hood, the Skyliner carried Ford's familiar heart. Y-block V8 options of 272, 292, or the 312 Thunderbird Special, producing up to 225 horsepower. But what turned it into a legend was not the power, but the rarity. Only about 600 Skyliner glasstops rolled off the line in 1956. 1963, Fairlane 500 K-Code, 289, Hypo. What makes this car special begins with its contrast. On the outside, it looked no different from a mid-level Fairlane cruising around the neighborhood. A slim body, a weight of only about 2,950 pounds, and a 115.5-inch wheelbase that was just right for balance. But underneath that mild exterior was a heart capable of competing with many far more performance-oriented machines of its era. The 289 CID K-Code engine came with solid lifters, a high-performance cam, a dual-point distributor, and a 4-barrel carburetor, producing 271 horsepower, an extremely impressive number for a chassis as light as the Fairlane notably. This engine was the direct foundation for the later Mustang Hypo and Shelby GT350, making the Fairlane K-Code a kind of grandfather to the legendary Ford small block. On the road, a K-Code Fairlane could accelerate from 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 8 seconds and run the quarter mile in the mid-15s, fast enough to make many drivers think your car had been modified, but the truth lay in 3 letters in the VIN: K-Code. Production numbers are what make it a truly rare machine. Out of more than 28,000 Fairlane 500 Sport Coupes built that year, estimates suggest only about 200 were equipped with the K-Code Hypo package today. Every surviving K-Code Fairlane stands as a foundational stone of the Ford small block empire, simple, lean, and far stronger than anyone expected. 1964, Fairlane Thunderbolt, 427 High Riser. If there is any Fairlane that shocked the entire racing world from the moment it appeared, it is the 1964 Fairlane Thunderbolt, a machine Ford never intended for ordinary buyers but built solely to win. Based on the lightest 2-door Fairlane 500 sedan platform, Ford changed almost everything. The body was transformed for weight reduction. The hood, doors, and fenders were made of fiberglass, the windows were plexiglass, and the interior was stripped nearly bare. No radio, no heater, no sound-deadening materials. The battery was relocated to the trunk for better weight distribution. All of it served one purpose: to turn the mild-mannered Fairlane into a metal projectile. And that projectile was ignited by the 427 CID High Riser dual-quad ram air engine, which Ford modestly rated at 425 horsepower, but in reality produced far more. With a 4-speed top-loader transmission and heavy-duty rear axle, the Thunderbolt could run the quarter mile in the mid-11s, a performance that left rivals stunned. Ford built around 100 Thunderbolts, primarily for professional racing teams. Many were used up on the drag strip, making the surviving cars even more valuable today. 1967, Fairlane 427, R-Code and W-Code. After the Thunderbolt, Ford wanted to create a street-legal car that still carried true racing strength. That is why the 1967 Fairlane 427 R-Code and W-Code were born, cars that looked polite on the outside but carried a super stock heart underneath. Under the hood was the 427 cubic inch FE, one of the most legendary engines Ford ever built. The advertised 425 horsepower and 480 pound-feet of torque were modest numbers meant to satisfy insurance companies. In reality, its power made the Fairlane a nightmare for anyone involved in stoplight racing at the time. The R-Code version used dual quad carburetors, while the W-Code used a single 4-barrel, delivering near-instant throttle response. The drivetrain was equally impressive. The top-loader 4-speed transmission, heavy-duty cooling, front disc brakes, and the 9-inch rear axle were all inherited directly from Ford's earlier racing programs. Thanks to that, a Fairlane that looked as mild as a family car could run the quarter-mile in the low to mid-13-second range, rivaling many larger and more expensive muscle cars. But what elevated the 427 pair to legendary status was their extreme rarity. Only 229 units were produced in 1967, and among them, the most luxurious version, the Fairlane 500 XL, had only 72 units built. Many have disappeared over time, making the surviving cars today priceless. 1966. Fairlane 427 R-Code. In 1966, Ford was determined to bring 427 FE power to the street, and so the 1966 Fairlane R-Code was born. Less loud than the Thunderbolt, but no less ferocious. Under the hood was the 427 cubic inch FE medium riser, producing 425 horsepower, paired with a top-loader 4-speed transmission, dual Holy carburetors, heavy-duty cooling, and an entire drivetrain built to withstand real racing stress. This engine was never meant for ordinary buyers. It was for people who truly wanted to use the street as a practice track. On a straight line, the Fairlane 427 R-Code could run the quarter-mile in under 13 seconds, a number that earned respect from many racers of the era. In street muscle testing, the car reached 114 miles per hour at the end of the quarter mile in completely stock configuration, clear proof of the FE427's strength. But what made this model extremely rare was its cost. The R-Code package was as expensive as an entire standard Fairlane, meaning buyers had to be genuinely serious to commit. As a result, Ford sold only 57 units in all of 1966. Today, finding an intact 427 R-Code is like discovering a lost manuscript from a racing program Ford nearly brought to the street. 1968. Fairlane 500 R-Code 428 Cobra Jet. In 1968, Ford quietly slipped the infamous 428 Cobra Jet into the Fairlane and deliberately hid it beneath an unbelievably gentle exterior. The result was the 1968 Fairlane 500 R-Code 428 Cobra Jet, one of the most formidable sleepers ever built. Hidden under that smooth, ordinary-looking hood was the 428 CID Cobra Jet with a 10.6:1 compression ratio, a Holy 735 CFM carburetor, and an advertised output of only 335 horsepower, a number intentionally lowered to keep insurance companies calm. In reality, its true power exceeded 400 horsepower, with 445 pound-feet of torque, turning the Fairlane 500 into a deceptively deadly straight-line machine. Ford's cleverness lay in the design. The formal roof body style, squared-off lines, lack of performance badging, and especially the absence of any hood bulge, like those on the Mustang or Torino, made it impossible for anyone to suspect they were looking at a sleeping beast. Most cars came with the C6 automatic transmission, making it look even more like a serious family sedan than a muscle car. But the moment you pressed the throttle, every layer of camouflage vanished instantly. The F-Code Fairlane could run the quarter mile in the low to mid 13-second range, a speed that made even larger, more expensive performance cars nervous. What makes it legendary is its extreme rarity. In 1968, only 22 Fairlane 500s with the correct F-Code configuration were produced. 1957. Fairlane 500 Skyliner F-Code Supercharged. If there is one Fairlane that represents Ford's boldness pushed to the edge, almost to the point of recklessness, in the 1950s, nothing fits better than the 1957 Fairlane 500 Skyliner F-Code Supercharged. This was not just a rare car, it was the product of an era when engineers were allowed to dream big, test big, and fail big, as long as they created something the world had never seen before. The first thing that impresses you is the retractable hardtop system, a mechanical symphony of complexity, 7 electric motors, 4 lifting cylinders, countless relays, and more than 610 feet of wiring running throughout the body. In 1957, this was technology bordering on science fiction. When the roof folded neatly into the rear compartment, the Fairlane transformed into a futuristic object gliding down the boulevard. But what elevated the Skyliner to legendary status was the F-Code. Ford equipped it with the 312 cubic-inch Y-block, supercharged by the Paxton VR57, producing 300 horsepower, an extremely impressive figure for a full-size car of that era. It was one of the rare moments when Ford combined a very heavy electric roof system with a powerful supercharged engine, creating a car that was both luxurious and delightfully insane in the most 1950s way possible. But that dream was crushed by regulations. In April 1957, NASCAR banned superchargers. By June, the AMA issued its No Racing Pact. Ford was forced to terminate the F-Code program immediately, leaving production numbers below 20 units, with some sources even claiming only 13 were built. 1967. Fairlane 500, W-Code 427. This is not just a car that is unbelievably rare. It is the final missing piece that completes Ford's performance legacy of the 1960s. At first glance, you would never think it was special. The formal roof body, the squared-off lines, the lack of racing decals or flashy details, it looked like the kind of car a factory manager would drive home after work. But beneath that quiet exterior was a heart Ford originally built for the racetrack. The 427 cubic-inch FE side oiler, a top-loader 4-speed transmission, front disc brakes, a 9-inch rear axle, and everything you would expect from a machine born to win. The advertised 410 horsepower was only the tip of the iceberg. The engine was much stronger in real-world performance, and the side oiler reputation made it one of the most sought-after power plants in speed competitions of its era. But the reason this car ranks one comes down to production numbers. In 1967, only 11 Fairlane 500W codes were built worldwide, and among them, just a single car left the factory with the full drag package. The dark moss green example, ordered by racer Dave Van Loo. It is a one-of-one masterpiece in a group that was already ultra-rare. And now, I want to hear the story from you. Among the 10 rarest Fairlanes we just explored, which one impressed you the most? Was it the supercharged F-Code Skyliner, the ferocious 427 Thunderbolt, or the one-of-a-kind F-Code masterpiece. Each one carries its own era, its own philosophy, and a mark that can never be repeated. If you've ever seen a special Fairlane in person, or have a memory tied to this model line, share it in the comments. You might be surprised how even a small detail you remember can help reconstruct the history of machines that have almost vanished. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. There are many forgotten legends waiting to be awakened in the next videos. See you soon.